Thank you so much for joining this morning. So this morning, we're just really going to be talking about businesses. We're taking a step back. It's just a workshop for you to take a step back and really think about where your business is and how to think about the growth. In terms of what we want you to walk away from today, is really to gain clarity on your current growth stage, where your business is, recognize early warning signs, which are the triggers that you're about to reach the next stage of your business, understand the 3 pillars, which is your structure, your tax systems, and also and then also learn from the real business experience. We've got Michelle who's just going to really talk to you about her journey and where she is with her business as well. I want you to leave with a strategic lens for decision making for your business. So I want to start out just giving you a context of the problem we're trying to talk to today and really just discuss with you. And it's the growth illusion. A lot of business thinks they're growing because their revenue is increasing. That's actually not growth. There's a lot of misconception about growth. You think the more clients you have, you're definitely growing. You think higher revenue, I'm definitely growing. You think I'm so busy now in my business, 24 hours is not enough, I'm growing. You think, but actually, what growth is when the complexity of your transactions change. So when the way you make decisions changes, when the complexity of your sales, your volumes, all of those things starts to change, that's when you're actually at the tipping point of growth. When your visibility as the founder actually disappears, your ability to actually know how much profit you're making, to know how much revenue you're making, that's actually when you're really experiencing growth. When pressure builds with your operation, when there's now bottlenecks and inefficiency in your business, you're at the tipping point of growth. So you start to experience the common growth pains. You start experiencing cash flow stress, tax surprises. All of a sudden, you're getting bills that you didn't expect. Because remember again, as you start to experience growth, your visibility and your control starts to fall away. You start having delayed and unreliable financial reporting because your structures can no longer keep up with it. You now start to experience founders fatigue. I'm not sure many of you here is experiencing founders fatigue. Then your operational bottlenecks and everything still depends on you, right? Now the operation is now bigger than you. That's where you start feeling the common growth pains for your business. So most businesses just don't break. You start feeling the symptoms just before you get to that breaking point. The 3 pillars in terms of when you start to grow that needs to actually start to change your business structure. So you need to start thinking about your entity structure, your ownership, your liability, your governance, and your accountability of your business. You need to see how those work together. This is when you really need to sit with your lawyer. Hopefully you've done it beforehand, and Albert will give you some insights today about how to look at those. Your tax strategy needs to change. You're no longer just chasing compliance when it's due. You need to start planning ahead. You need to start thinking about your business model and the impact it has on long-term tax strategy. You need to start thinking about your compensation structure and long-term optimization. You need to look at your systems and your processes, right? Do you have financial visibility? It's no longer at year end. You need to have real-time information. How does your workflow and operation work? Is it efficient, right? And you need to look at about how scalable is your operation. Can your operation live without you? So those are the 3 pillars we're going to really be deep diving today in our Ask the Expert series. When you think about your growth stages and your inflection points for your business, you start out and people usually say start up. I call it survival, right? Because you had an idea and now you need to make sure that idea survives. At this point in time, all you're thinking about is compliance. Do I tick the box? Can I do the bare minimum to just survive and get the revenue in? Right? The founder is overwhelmed. You're head of marketing, you're head of sales, you're head of operations, you're doing everything. Then you get to the control stage. Now, your control stage is when you now have a bit of consistency in your business. You've got everything under control, you can get it done. But that's actually when you start feeling the cash flow stress. right? And that's usually when you're now about to experience that growth, that growth inflection. Then you get to the optimization phase where you now start to think about, okay, do I delegate? Do I get somebody else to do this? Then you start seeing the bottlenecks in your business. And really, it's at that point that either your business breaks or makes it for scale. At the point of optimization, it's your ability to optimize the 3 pillars that can really determine if your business then is able to go the scale route or goes back to control and survival. And that's the inflection point that we really want to focus on today. So just looking at this, thinking about where your business is on the journey. Your business could be on survival, which is great, but knowing that this is the journey you're going forward with so that you can identify each inflection point. You could be on optimization phase. The stress is on now. So thinking, what do you need to do right so it doesn't become a breaking point? So in terms of what brings first when you get to that optimization phase, you have business structures. So inconsistency in how you pay yourself. Today you pay yourself, tomorrow you don't. Your income is not consistent. You have high liability exposure and you just don't have the right governance in place anymore. Your tax strategy as well, you just end up at the end of the year, your accountant calls you and you've got a big tax balance and you're like, why am I so broke? CRA is making me broke. No, CRA is not making you broke. The business is not optimized. You can't plan anymore and you're more reactive in your decision making because you're trying to survive. Your system and processes just start to fail. You have poor visibility, and again, that's where you start saying. So most founders, they solve the symptoms, right? Not on the underlying issue. Most founders don't have the opportunity to take a step back and actually realize it's a feeding phase. Your business about to blossom, and it's that feeding phase that you need to get right. Then the most mistakes businesses make is they just try to do quick fix. Just get a new software. Software doesn't solve the solution, right? You need to have processes in place, redesigned. I love technology, but I always say, technology is a layer that you put on your actual process. So if you don't have the systems and everything, you just have to use pen and paper. How would you do it? If you just have to walk to the other person, to your supplier to buy the product, walk back, not even a horse, just walk, how would you do it? And once you can figure out that process, then you can layer your technology on top of it. I found with a lot of founders, what we start to do is we incorporate without tax planning. It just seems like the next stage. Okay, I'm a sole proprietor now. Let me become incorporated. Incorporation is not for everyone, and there's a timing that it needs to be done. And also growth without reporting systems. You're growing, but you don't know what's going on. It's not only about your numbers, also understanding finance touches every part of your business, right? So every decision you make in terms of your pricing, your structures, your growth, your exit, all those you need to have visibility of it. And then also IR without operational structure. So you just say, I need the next me. You haven't really planned it out in terms of how your org structure will work long term and how do you plug everyone in. So more mature businesses, what they start to think differently is really about they move away from filing and compliance and to start to think about planning and forecasting. They start to think about strategic decision and strategic support. So the next person you hire needs to be quite strategic. The next vendor you go into partnership with needs to be strategic. Every decision needs to be plotted and falls into your bigger plan. The cost of waiting and not doing this can be quite a lot. You've got increased tax exposure, founder burnout, which is quite real now because then you just can't continue any longer. You lose profitability and you can't make the decision. And then the operation efficiency breaks your business. So instead of going from that inflection point to scaling, you digress to control. Because then when you're in control, you're like, I think at least I have that. But you're actually digressing from control back to survival. And instead of growing the business, you do not grow the business. So just one thing I want to, before we go into our panel discussion, is just to think that growth does not require growing more. it requires evolving differently. So just to introduce our panel for today, I've got Susan, the founder and CEO of Scale Management Consulting. And really our passion is around small businesses and just talking about how they can and helping them with profitability, cost management, and growth. I've got Albert. Albert is a lawyer, is a partner at Bender Class Law Firm.
Very good. Close enough.
Close enough. I always say, oh no, English is not my first language, but I do not think that's English. Based in St. Thomas, and it really works with business in terms of corporate structure, merger and acquisition, and also just their exit strategy. And I've got Michelle. Michelle is the founder of Caring Moments Personal Service. Michelle has gone on quite an interesting journey in our business right now, and also at an inflection point where she's thinking about what to do, the decisions she's making, so she can also just share with you. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Albert, I'm going to start with you. So what are the biggest signs a business has outgrown its current legal structures?
I'll just kick off with a very, very brief introduction about myself. I like to tell my friends I'm a corporate mergers and acquisition monkey. That's what I do. I buy and sell businesses and all the in between, like the business starting, disputes between like founders, and then exiting a business, the life cycle of a business. And, like I started out on Bay Street in Toronto, like every kid does. And, I figured that really wasn't for me. And frankly, I have a much higher risk appetite than your typical lawyer. And so I took off my lawyer hat. I joined Brookfield Asset Management. I was there for about 8 years. And then as a private equity investor. So I've done buying and selling businesses, like kind of like fairly large businesses like Hostile Takeover, Interpipeline, for instance. And then in 2024, again, I thought like I wasn't taking enough risk in my life. And so I wanted to do the entrepreneurial thing. So I quit my job. And then my mom thought I was crazy, but I was like, But in any case, I wanted to build a regional law firm. And, it's applying the principles of private equity roll-up in an industry that is as old as it gets. And so, we're building out law firms or acquiring law firms in secondary and tertiary markets and hoping to build a regional law firm with hundreds of locations and bring services in underserved communities. And so we're currently at 8 locations, 15 lawyers. We started in 2024, 8 locations, 15 lawyers, and 50 employees. And the reason why I'm telling all of this is because I kind of wear a slightly different hat other than just a lawyer. So I'm on the buying side of acquiring businesses and on the scaling side. And I know how it feels to wear 17 hats being an operator. So I've sort of covered that spectrum. And so coming back to the question, one of the best things that I've heard sort of help me frame thinking about early stages of a business is that one of the key ingredients that's necessary in order to scale organization, it's people. Is a relationship between the people, either at the very senior level, the original founders, or bring in new people because your business needs new skill sets. And where I often see 2 things that spin out of this is your initial shareholder agreement as between quote unquote the founders, and then the many different forms of calling the same thing, but the management incentive plan for incentivizing new people who are maybe not the founders, but key personnel that can help you drive growth. And I think the typical thing that I see is that over time, these relationships change, and you need to sort of have enough flexibility and have enough foresight in these agreements to anticipate these changes. And then the other thing I want to tell you is that fundamentally, in every business I've been involved in, you're not going to be able to anticipate everything, and neither does it make sense to upfront anticipate everything. So there's a balance between we'll deal with it later versus figuring out everything, because your shareholder agreement would be a tome that's 1,000 pages. And so it's a balance, figuring out like sort of like what can we do later to restructure. And so in my personal experience, like I've restructured like, like governance and then like shareholder agreements, like multiple times, even in my own business. We've done it like 4 times already in like since 2024. So it's an evolution, and having the business partner that has that mindset that can change over time. And then the other quick thing I can touch on, the management incentive plan, is that you see this in startups a lot, where basically, I forget the saying, but like, like in dating, something about milk and the cow, it's the same concept, that you don't want to give away equity and have no way of getting it back. Rather the equity needs to be given out commensurate with sort of the input. And then there is a fairness to it. And then when the parties don't feel fair, whatever the deal that they cut, that's where disputes start to happen. And then so I would say the key thing in like management incentive plans is like thinking about how vesting works. Like there is time-based vesting, there's performance, but also on sort of like exits, like usually how a person leaves the position would impact like how the company can get the shares back at what kind of valuation. And also if you're selling the business, well, you may not want this guy, like the new ownership may not want someone who is owning a piece of the business, because that they don't fit within the growth plan. And so those are all things that are very structural that you need to think about. And then lots to unpack there, I'm sure. I'll stop talking now.
I just also wanted to unpack the shareholder agreement, right? You have a lot of founders that start by themselves.
Yep.
So what's the inflection plan in terms of when they have to get into a shareholder agreement, and what are the key factors?
There is no, I think the lawyer answer, it depends, but like there's a couple different risk buckets. So depending on how, I'll sort of tell you the couple different risk buckets, and it's about when you're going to start noticing changes in your relationships. It's always about being one step ahead of those relationship changes. So I'll give you sort of 3 key things that a shareholder agreement deals with, and they have different risk patterns. So the first one's very, very easy and tend to be not difficult to negotiate. What we call like the typical 3 Ds of life. So death, divorce, disability. And so these are life events that could happen to any of us. And what it creates is instability in the business by introducing potentially an involuntary business partner. Imagine picking a business partner to start a business. Like that's already difficult enough. Like, there's always pluses and minuses with working with someone, but it's a necessity in scaling. Now imagine all of a sudden, like, he thought it was a good idea to go down to Vegas, had a great time, and then he got divorced, and now you're gonna have to deal with his ex-wife on top of that. So you don't want those scenarios to happen. So generally there's a provision, like a whole section that deals with these things. And the way it deals with it is, it says in very, very broad terms that if any of these events happens, your other business partner can buy you out, usually at fair market value, because people don't assign faults to these events happening to you. And to like double click on that, it's like if you're disabled, if you're super, super disabled, like on the involuntary business partner concept, like, your power of attorney, like again, is usually the spouse who takes over. The spouse may not know anything about the HVAC business. It may not make sense for someone like her to be making business decisions. So that's another scenario. Death, same thing. Depending on who the beneficiaries are, you're dealing with maybe 4 other people. And so usually that death, divorce, disability has a very high degree of alignment. Because people know these things can happen to each other, and no one wants involuntary business partners. Now, let's talk about governance. Governance is, a lot of times it sounds like a very complex word. It's as simple as, how are we running the business? And the simplest way to think about it is that you have different buckets of decisions of different degrees, different decalogue of importance. So like there's super important decisions, like for instance, like filing for bankruptcy. That's like very, very existential type of decision. And then there's decisions like, like spending capital expenditure, like CapEx north of $300,000. So the question is then, like, what degree of agreement between the shareholders do you need to make those decisions of differing importance? And so that, again, honestly, like earlier is always better, but in the beginning, you're just heads down, you're trying to grow the revenue, you're trying to smooth out the operations, and there's never a good time, but it's a enterprise risk thing. The later you leave this, there is higher degree of possibility for disagreements. And for instance, like right now, I'm in like 7 different shareholder disputes, and I can tell you, like, generally there's only 2 outcomes. One is you pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in litigation bills, and and that's a good outcome, and it gets resolved. The second outcome is the business goes to zero. Those are generally the 2 outcomes I see when you have a dispute for early stage companies. And the last piece is like what we call liquidity provisions. So liquidity provisions governs how, if somebody wants to turn their shares into cash, what are the rules of the game? How do we do this? And so I'll pause there because I feel like I've talked a lot.
Thanks, Albert. And I just wanted to, while you're talking about this, I want to ask you about the legal structure mistakes, because you've talked that partnership can be one of them that creates major stress during growth.
Yeah, it's interesting because the structures of the business is always driven by 2 considerations. Number 1 is tax. Because all these governance, all these things, we can layer it on like a partnership, on a corporation. It doesn't really matter. We can make the rules however we want. Usually your decision on structures is driven by tax. And, very, very, so that's one. The other thing that sort of drives a decision, and very specific to particular types of businesses, is liability. So like setting up an incorporated entity is the best way to ring fence, what we call ring fencing liability. So like, for instance, like if I am in a B2C business, like I'm dealing with kids in the jungle gym, like you want to be incorporated. Like you don't want to be taken to the cleaners because somebody fell off the jungle gym. Those are like high liability type of things. And then, so I would say it's really driven first and foremost by tax. And then second is like concerns about liability. And as your business scales, like, very, very traditional, like it's a common playbook you see again and again is like estate planning, which really like I see it as a function of tax, because in Canada we have $1 million and change of like lifetime capital gain exemption. So if you own a business, whatever your shares are when it starts is worth 0, and then you're going to get to a point where those shares are worth in excess of $1 million change. And so when that happens, unless you want to pay more tax, you're generally going to have to do an estate freeze. And so there's a whole procedure around estate freeze where you, in effect, can bring in more beneficiaries into the business and their tax attribute into the business and use their lifetime capital gain exemption. And like our laws allow us to do that. That's just tax planning. And so, those are some of the things that you generally see. So like to answer your question more specifically, it's tax driven, it's liability driven. And later on, a lot of the reorganizations, I would say 90% of reorganizations in the company's life cycle is all tax driven.
So just summarizing that, saying how your tax planning really needs to inform your corporate structure. So really not putting the cart before the horse in this instance. I'm going to switch up the gear and move to Suzanne. Suzanne really works with businesses that face operational complexities because often that increases faster than visibility structures and decision making. Suzanne, I'm going to hand over to you and just let you give a bit of an intro about yourself and what your business does.
Thank you. I love what I just heard over here and the finance component to it. Operations really sits at the center of the spider's web. So we touch all of those little areas. We try to bring them all together. My background, I'm a Londoner, born, raised, educated here, love the city. And I have an area of focus with my agency where we are in that messy middle. Some people call it the messy middle. Some people call it no man's land. It's got a lot of names, but that place where you are as a founder-led business, understanding the complexity, you feel it in your guts. You're up at 2:00 in the morning and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to make payroll? I know there's sales. Why is it that I am experiencing this challenge all of a sudden at profitability? And there's a number of things that happen in that messy middle, and I know we're going to touch on a bunch of them, but they are literally all of these different elements. So, for example, just to nail home what Albert was talking about, my very first entrepreneurial journey came after a termination. And so the termination was the company I'd been working for had been mismanaged and the division was being shut down. So it wasn't my choice. And I said, well, I didn't really enjoy that feeling. I'm going to go into business for myself. Thank you very much. Because that's what you should do, right? And 6 of us got together. That's 6 people. That is a lot of herding cats. I did not understand it at the time. 3 years later, I said, thank you very much. I'm just not a yes man, unlike several of the other parties. I love you. I'm going to love you from afar. And so I exited. We had a founder's agreement, a shareholders agreement. It's never been updated. It's never been managed. And 2 of the original 6 are now in their 80s. 2 of them have also had critical illnesses. And neither one of their partners want anything to do with the business. And because of the founding money and finances, there is a debt owing. So what happens should they pass away? They haven't, they're very healthy, by the way. But what happens, right? When they go to pass away, we have key man risk. We have a bunch of other things that we need to discuss from a governance standpoint, because as the business has continued to grow, it's gotten more profitable. It's wonderful. But what happens when they get through that messy middle, which is where they are now? And there are lots of challenges that are involved in that. And that messy middle component, I love right now the ability of AI and automation to help move that lower band part of that messy middle up a little bit. But we really have to be careful. Garbage in, garbage out. And so if we all have chaos going in and not good data and governance structures, tax, finances, visibility, leadership, then we're not going to be doing anything except accelerating that chaos.
Thank you so much. I'm just thinking about profitability and cash flow. It doesn't need to be the starting point for growing businesses.
Please, yes. Can we have some visibility into our finances? 90% of the clients that we've got, so we're a team of between 12 and 15 people on the bench, and 90% of our clients, the founders hate finances. I do not like spreadsheets, is what they say to me. And as much as I love that, I try very hard to instill at least 3 things. One is you need a cash flow analysis that you update on a weekly basis, please. Because then you can look at that cash flow analysis a minimum of 4 months out and go, you know what? I don't need to be up at 2:00 in the morning. I'm okay. Can we have some forecasting discipline in the business?
Yeah.
And then let's have some good quality decision-making that isn't my gut anymore, right? The farther you grow from being that founder-led business that's 1 or 2 people, the more challenging it becomes for the owner-operator or the founder who's growing and bringing in teams underneath to have the visibility of what's going on day to day. And so they need that ability, and it all comes down to money. Last, the business model. When you start out as that solopreneur, a lot of your expenses are variable expenses. As you grow, they become fixed expenses. And there is a point at which if you can delay that as much as possible so that as sales ebb and flow and haven't hit consistency yet, it would be very nice for that founder to be able to have that breathing room in order to build the structure underneath. If you're a 5-person business, you don't operate like a 50-person business. But likewise, if you're a 50-person business, please don't operate like a 5-person.
Just thinking from that, like building while you're flying, that's something a lot of business do, right? And how does that look like operationally?
Total chaos. Oftentimes you have leaders who, when I started the first business, my first entrepreneurial journey, I was a T4 employee before. I had no experience, no expertise. Yes, I was a scientist and I'd been in the pharma industry for 20 years, and that's great. But now I'm an entrepreneur and I'm sitting in an owner's seat. I have no experience whatsoever to understand what's coming at me. And so we built it while flying, but we had a lot of other people. The good part about the 6 people is that we had a lot of experience to do what we were doing and be able to make it past that stage. But the operational complexity, the processes that you need, the decision clarity, the financial clarity, understanding what risk mitigation structures you need to have and when you need to have them and not before, are very important.
Like once you say that, like, because a lot of founders, we do actually build while flying and not thinking about the impact of it and trying to figure out things. And it's usually, like you said, a disaster. At what point do you typically see businesses that you work with outgrow their current structure? And even when this happens, what starts to surface?
The first band where that happens is somewhere between $750,000 and $2 million. That's when you're going from that easy breezy, mostly variable over to the messy middle. When you hit between the 5 and the 10 million mark, life becomes much more corporate, structured, predictable. And again, there's another layer that will happen about 10 million after that one. All of those come down to how you want to look at things from a risk management standpoint. How do you plan for your taxes? How do you have visibility and processes? How do you do the hiring, right? If you are in that lower band, most oftentimes I hear founders say, well, I needed so-and-so and I knew that Bob next door did that. And so I hired Bob and, it worked out great. But now I'm 4 times the size. I don't think Bob's going to keep working with us because he just doesn't quite have the skill set that I need. Skill sets, people, leaderships, teams, they all evolve as you move forward. And you have to be able to understand that leadership takes a different road, perhaps, than what you were thinking it might.
And when you're talking about the different road, then what's the biggest disconnect that you see between business structure and how they actually operate?
Tacit knowledge. Has anybody heard about that? So it's Bob in the corner who's been doing the job for 10 years and everything that he's doing, usually that's the founder at lower levels in terms of revenue bands, it's in their mind, right? I intuitively know exactly what's going on. I intuitively know that I have to do this, that, or the other. But as I grow, now I'm going to bring on 3 more people. I have to take the knowledge out of Bob's brain and I have to put it into those 3 people. How do I do that? The systems, the process, the ability to actually make it repeatable within the company.
That's an interesting phase, tacit knowledge. And I know we all experience that where there's one person in your team that has everything and they take a day off and the whole operation can work.
When I'm talking to potential clients and I hear that it's, Michelle did this and Michelle did that and Michelle did the other, and I don't hear anybody else in the team name, I'm sitting here thinking, we have a problem with Michelle and key man risk. Thank you.
Earlier you were talking about variable and fixed cost. If a business owner is trying to stay lean, right, should they think what should they think about and the timing, and how do they actually manage staying between variable cost for long before they becomes a fixed cost for their business?
We have this really new cool thing called AI and automation. And I think that that's been one of the big pieces that as long as you are not scaling complexity and chaos, you can delay the onset of that band a little bit with that first valley of death, if you will. And when you can keep it variable, now you can continue to look at your business model. You can continue to look at your risk, your corporate structure, your people. You don't need to hire as quickly as you would have before. And the reason that that's important when I talk about variable costs as well is, I mean, think about it this way. When you start a business, it's cheap labor, right? It's you, usually. Maybe there's a couple of other people, like the 6 of us as co-founders. We didn't take full salaries. We didn't do anything like that. We're cheap labor, but we were working 40, 60 hours in the business. But when you move over to a more corporate structure, a larger structure, you now have to pay market rates. And the people who come in are probably not going to be spending 60, 80 hours because their livelihood depends on it as much as your livelihood depends on it. That's not a bad thing. It's just reality. And so there's some different pieces to think about there. If you can delay the onset and think through and do some forecasting and some tax planning and some risk mitigation, it's very important in order to make that leap successfully to the other end. And I'm going to put out there that not everybody has to. That glass ceiling, if you will, that I see so many founders hit their head on, you don't have to make the leap just because you want growth. Growth and success can mean different things for different people. So let's take the time as well as founders and entrepreneurs to understand what that means to us. Because it could be that you're dealing with critical illness or divorce or some other pieces, and just maybe going 10x isn't actually what you want. What you want is going to be something else, and you need to be able to define it and then build your business towards it.
Thank you, Suzanne. You talked about something about AI, and I mean, that's like the typical automation AI. Everyone is talking about it. But when does it genuinely provide clarity, and when does it start creating real business risk?
You need to have a business use case. And so if you can define a use case, something that is very helpful, fantastic. You make it bite-sized, and you have to be able to do the work up front to plan. So you talked at the very beginning of this about pen and paper, and let's go back to that. Great. Pen and paper, let's go back to that. If I can map out a process, I can probably automate it. We spend, I was surprised at this, but 20 to 30% of our admin time moving data. I use this tool, I have to take the data from this tool, I move it over here so I can upload it to make it useful in this tool. It doesn't matter whether it's marketing for social media videos, it's my fireflies I like to use in my meetings so that I can then take notes. But all that time is spent, 20 to 30%, just moving the data. You shouldn't have to do that. So there's a bunch of use cases in everybody's business that would make things much easier on the people. So then you're not leading to burnout. You're actually able to hire the people you need to do the jobs you need, not something that could actually be done by something else.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. And just summarizing what you said, it's really about it's not only, it's what growth looks like for you, right? So growth is not only operational or financial in nature. It is a deeply personal business growth. It's how do you see your business growing? What counts for you? And that's why I just want to introduce you, everyone, to Michelle. Michelle is a business owner. She started a business recently, and she's really going through the weeds. She's in the weeds. And really, for you, Michelle, what made you decide to start your business?
Well, good morning, everybody. My business started probably about 45 years ago in just knowing how to take care of people. So my heart is full of knowing that I want to create safety for people, knowing that I want to create comfortable environments for people to receive care. I'm the owner of Caring Moments Personal Services, and my journey has been very different than what has been talked about here this morning. I'm chaos. Hi! So I decided I was working in the corporate world. For 25 years, I worked for a software company, and I did customer service in that environment. It was a summer job that landed into a 25-year career. I was happy. I decided in 2015, when my grandmother got dementia, and she was abused. She was abused in long-term care, both financially and physically, that's not acceptable. And I decided to take that passion and move towards healthcare. So I became a PSW in 2017, and I loved it immediately. I found that when I was working in those environments, I was used to the corporate world, and healthcare is not at all set up that way. So staff is overworked, it's not treated well, managers are pressured for all kinds of different strategies and things that are coming at them. But it was creating bad service for people that required it at their most vulnerable time. So it really bothered me working in there and seeing that people are burnt out, that people are not necessarily nice to others, and it just wasn't right for me. So I decided that I was going to start offering private PSW service. And I got my first big client in late 2017, and it was a lovely man with dementia, and I spent all kinds of hours with him and helped him find a little bit of joy and distract him from let the family have a break. And that was another big part of that. It was just beautiful. In 2018, Western University was doing a research project on how to do person-centric care for people with cognitive problems. So I was a part of that, and that really firmed up for me what is required in person-centric care and how to do that correctly. They had an extremely good program to help build that knowledge. And so I did private business, and I worked in long-term care and retirement homes and agencies and basically every flavor that you can imagine for that journey. I did have a significant loss in 2023. I lost my 29-year-old son, which really threw me off course for 9 months, I would say very clearly. I wasn't sure that I was ever going to be able to go back to work, but I knew that I had a passion in me for doing that service to people. So I went back, and I was working at long-term care when it happened. So I went back to long-term care for just a little bit of time and realized it was too fast, it was too intense. It didn't fit me. I couldn't do that anymore. So I went and worked for an agency and thought, okay, I'll go work for an agency and I'll just do this for the rest of my life. Make sure people are well taken care of, and that and then I don't have to do any of the overhead. I couldn't even imagine that I would actually start a business as a grieving mom. So that really turned it a different direction. After about 6 months, I started getting private clients again. People that I used to work with would do referrals for me, and I ended up with like 3 private clients at the time. And I said, oh, okay, this is a lot, and I'm not getting enough hours there. And I took a really deep breath, and I said, okay, I'm going to jump off the cliff here, and I'm going to go ahead and start my business. So that was a humongous risk for me, but there was no thinking about structure, about anything you've talked about this morning. So I went blindly. I did have those 3 clients right away. Shortly after that, I got the big one. I got a 24-hour-a-day client who required significant help, which I couldn't do on my own. So I had to find 5 PSWs very quickly. And I found 5 amazing PSWs, but they were subcontractors. We're going to attack this. We're going to get it done. We're going to keep moving through this. So that was more money than I'd ever seen. It was just unbelievable to me that this was my life now, and it just kept growing. So that client we were with for a few months, but another one popped in who required 12 hours of service a day, and that kept going. And literally, I was being inundated with clients. I had to bring in more PSWs. I had to keep moving forward. I had moments of, oh, maybe I should be doing some structure, but I couldn't do that. I was up at 2 a.m. I was doing all of that work, trying to keep the business growing, make sure everyone was paid, make sure everyone was invoiced, made sure all of those things that are part of a business. And really, this happened and continued to happen for a whole year. A whole year of this level of incredible growth and amazing results. And I thought that my revenue that I brought in my first year really said, yeah, you made it, you're good. And well, you learn lessons. So I had spent, actually, Deepo, ask your question. No. That I had blindly, through that first year, invested in a laptop. I had invested in marketing. I had invested in all kinds of tools to help my business because I knew I needed to put those things in place. So I always thought that was going to be the thing. So that's the beginning of that.
So looking back now in the rear view, it's always easier to look back. Thank you so much for sharing your story. You know, the first time I heard it, I was like, this is so impactful. And we all go through that. We're all trying to build while flying.
Yeah.
And you just don't expect the market to respond in the way it does, which also says the value of what your agency was providing. That's why you could get that growth, you could get that referral. So with the rear view mirror, what was your biggest lesson in your first year of business?
Well, one of the biggest lessons, and it's something I knew in the beginning, is that my business is filled with leaps, valleys, and hills, because people pass away. People move to long-term care. People move in with family. They move around the world. So that didn't really happen in that first year of business. So when it happened in my beginning of my second year of business, I didn't understand. And I thought for sure it's going to happen, right? I've always had, my referral base is humongous. I get people, families referring me to other families all the time, but that didn't happen. It stopped happening. So now I'm looking at it, and I have invested in an accountant. I have invested in marketing. I had invested in all of these things that are now payments that are coming out of my money to keep my business afloat. And I'm trying more advertising, and I'm trying to find, how do I reach people that aren't in my referral base and really build that out. So that has been one of the bigger things that I've had to really look at. I learned in this, I would say, a year and a quarter, that you can't count on things to go the way you want them to all the time. And it doesn't. And going with your heart and doing the job you love and it becoming successful does teach a lot of lessons.
And when you're just speaking about rebuilding, when the business was not going how you planned again, and where you thought when growth looked different in a different season, how did you challenge yourself? What did you think about doing different?
Well, I've really started to do a lot of door-to-door to businesses that I believe are strategic in moving my business forward. So building different referral networks that are really there to kind of fill those gaps when they happen again. So I had to really take a step back and think, okay, I can't count on those referrals to come through. And I've had to pivot a lot. And I learned a lot of things. I learned that doing advertisement on the internet is not really very effective because you are one of millions. You are one of thousands of companies that look exactly like you who are out there. And even if I am talking about things that are different and better than a lot of those companies, I can't make anyone see it because it all looks the same.
I mean, you make a valid point because there's so much noise on social, on the internet, and really the differentiating yourself and with the care you give in healthcare, it's so personal.
Absolutely.
So it needs to also have that one-on-one, and that's why your referral base was really the engine that was driving your revenue originally.
Absolutely. The types of reviews that I get are really personal and very impactful. So when people do see those reviews, they're definitely interested. And generally, when I talk to a client, I win that client. It's not a problem with getting the client. It's getting them to see me and find me more than anything else. But it's been, it's been very challenging for sure.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I mean, just hearing our story, I'm sure it's inspired all of us because we've all been there. When we start out, when the market changes, the current economic conditions, we also find ourselves in the country. And just trying to adapt as a business owner as you really go through all this. And like you said, you just don't have enough time to think about the structures, the systems, putting all those things in place. And you really are trying to just survive, and business is also growing. I want to open this up to the audience. If you guys have any questions you would like to ask the panel.
This question is for Michelle. So now that your business is scaling and growing, at a very strong trajectory, so are you still doing a lot of the groundwork? Are you still working, as a PSW, or now you've taken the scene, behind the scene?
Had to back away a little bit from doing the actual support over that year. I had too much to do with the business. And even though clients really wanted, when I would send my PSWs are lovely. Mm-hmm. Like every single one of them made a humongous difference to the clients that they touched.
Nice.
But they wanted me. So yes. It was always a challenge to get, to step away. And it's something that I've had to really teach myself to do versus doing the one-to-one work. So it's certainly been interesting.
Okay, so maybe this now calls out to what Susan has said about tacit knowledge, being able to pass that knowledge that you have, the personality you have into your staff. So how are you, doing that? If you've, thought about it.
Yeah, my staff and I are very, very close. Like we have a very good relationship and we talk about everything. So they know, and they've all been part of that journey, and I have shared that journey with them as we've gone. So they are my biggest cheerleaders. So it's you make a difference with the connections that you make. So I share that knowledge and I share that, and so far it hasn't bit me, but time will tell, right? So it's a risk I'll take.
Okay. All right, thank you for that.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Are you asking the question because that's the stage of business that you're at?
Well, not really, but I'm PSW, so and I have experience in sales, and it's something like her story inspired me to think about something like this, because the personality I have, the care that I give, is also like what she has described. I love to help people. And before this, I have farmer experience. So it took me a while to step away from one-on-one care, face-to-face care, community care, to go into corporate. I did it because I was like, okay, I wanted to reach much more people. But I enjoyed the one-on-one care. And that's why when I came to Canada, working as a PSW was good for me. It was therapeutic because I enjoy making that impact one-on-one. But then I also want to be able to scale that to reach so much more people. So hearing the story is inspiring and saying, okay, maybe I can do something like this.
So then, Michelle, do you have systems and processes in place that have the way that you treat clients, the way that made your business successful? Is it documented? Do you have them go through a training program that says specifically this is how we do things? It's not just that I'm hiring somebody that's a very capable, competent PSW for the business. I've also, we do it differently, we do it this way. Have you systematized all of that?
Not officially. So no, none of the processes, none of that type of thing happened. It was, I was flying. I was just flying. So really, yes, I did that all the time, and I would teach them and make sure that they were a good fit and all of that. So yes, if I had been in this room 2 years ago, it would have been different. But we've just kept making sure everybody had what they need to do their job the best they can, and know and trust that they will provide that care. And yes, I would love to have done that.
So if I can put on my operator's hat for just a minute and suggest, when you have people that you're hiring in and you're teaching and training them the first time, it's a great way to say, listen, can you just document this? This is part of your job as you come in, to document the process and then continue to iterate that documentation on a regular basis. It's also really good as you are thinking through decisions to think it out loud, record it on video, do a meeting, have somebody take notes, whatever, because you can build that framework to systematize it for the future. And to what I know Albert has probably thinking in his mind, it is going to change. We do need to continue to iterate all of those systems and processes on a regular basis.
I have another question for Albert. From a legal standpoint, if you are, I know right now, a lot of boomer businesses are, going out for sale because boomers are retiring. And if you want to buy a business, one of those businesses, now I'm not just talking about a startup now, or a business that has been around for like 5 years. I'm talking of something that's been around for like maybe, 30 years and above. What are the positive things to look at and negative things to look at, especially if you don't have experience in that business? Like you mentioned, a HVAC business. Imagine that it's not something I'm aware of, it's not something I know, but I'm interested in this business. And I don't have to have all the ground knowledge to be able to buy that business, right? So
No, like that's a fantastic question. Just to give you a bit of context, I think last year, the year before, I myself acquired 4 different law firms. And so we think about this even in our business. And the first thing that's sort of like the pros and cons is that if you can buy a business that is set up and then for value, meaning like it's not too expensive, I'm the type of person who favors certainty and speed. If you can tell me, we can get this done in 3 months, let's do it. And then what are the terms? Who's taking what risk? And so I think growth by acquisition or starting by acquisition has its benefits of that certainty and that speed. Here's the bad part about buying a business. You're buying a bag of problems. So the question is it worth you spending the money to buy that bag of problems? So there's assets and liabilities, and or is it better to sort of capitalize whatever you're going to spend and start a business? And I think it just depends. Some businesses tend to have very entrenched, high trust relationships that is harder to get going. And also you got to think about the sales cycle. Some businesses B2C, the sales cycle would be within 3 minutes, right? Whereas if you're selling stuff to municipalities, you can be the best salesperson in the world, but to sell something to the municipality of London, that could be a 1.5 year conversation. How many years and a half of your life do you have? And so I think it's an amalgamation of quite a few criterias. And so in our business, it's a very high trust business. So I tend to go into a market, I have a selection screen where I know I want to be in Woodstock. I know I want to be in Brantford. And we joke about it, but everyone from Brantford apparently hates Brantford. I don't know why. But like they're cities that I know I can make good business there because there's just supply and demand imbalance. And then again, this is a personality difference, and my background is in private equity, so I buy businesses. And so my sort of first layer of thinking is that, well, if I can pay a fair price, and instead of spending 3 years building a business, I think I would rather do that and scale faster. And so I would go into the market, look at sort of who are the top sort of quartile of performers out there, because I don't want to buy a huge bag of problems. Then I'd rather not do that at all. I should just relax. And so the question is from the assets out there, is there a suitable one? And then the key thing, not even on the legal side, the key thing that I think everyone worries about, and you ought to be worried about, is in that transition, how does the customer experience get impacted? Because again, I'm in a very high trust business. And so our strategy has always been on the customer end. You're solving for as little difference as possible in the beginning, so they don't even know what happened. And then it's on the back end where let's call it the middle office and the back office where you're improving it. And then what they're experiencing is that it's kind of I use a fast serve analogy. It's if people Big Mac burgers, that's what you're buying. You're buying that affinity, that established relationship with the Big Mac burger. What you're trying to do is in your back kitchen and your supply chain, make it cheaper, make it faster, so that you can serve them a Big Mac burger instead of 6 minutes, you could do it in 4. And then capacity. So if on a weekend, someone wants to order 600 Big Mac burgers, I'll sell it to you. And then so I have the ability to do that. And so I think to your question, my personal tendency is that if I can buy speed and certainty, and then I understand the risk and how to mitigate it, that's always my first choice. Now, the other thing that I want to very briefly touch on is that at different scales of business, you see this all the time. I'll give you an example. Back in my days at Brookfield, we owned and we took private Enercare. It's a decent sized business. It's a big business. The number of invoicing systems it has, you'd be shocked. We quite literally had something north of 30 invoicing system. It's mind-boggling. And if you understand how the business got to be where it is that they went out and acquired a whole bunch of HVAC operators. They have each their own system. And so a lot of times you see this in every single type of business, shipping, logistics, DP World, the perfect example. We looked under the hood, we walked away from potentially buying the business because it operates almost 4,000 different businesses. It's just not operable. It's crazy. And so I'm not even going to tell you exactly how much it costs at Enercare for us to put in, collapse all the invoicing system into one. I can tell you it's a number between $10 to $100 million. And the implementation took almost 2 years. So the reason why I'm telling this story is that sometimes it's very easy to get into this trap where you acquire one business after another. And then you're not doing the hard work of integrating the assets. And you end up with crazy number of systems that really don't function as one business. They're a loose bag of problems, and they all have problems. And so there is a balance between sort of buying assets and problems for cheap and get it done fast. But then as you kind of start acquiring them, you have to fix the problems as you go, or else once it gets to a scale, it's just not solvable. It's solvable, but you're gonna have to toss $10 to $100 million at it, type of thing. Yep.
Can I?
Yeah.
If I can stack onto that one, he was talking a lot about risk, which is really important. And so when you're looking at the silver tsunami, which is what you're describing, the boomers who are, and the older, the Gen Xs who are retiring, when you're looking at evaluating those businesses through the due diligence process, is it all in one person, i.e. the founder's brain still? Or have they been able to systematize? Understanding what risk, what did you call it? A bag of problems? Understanding what challenges you're going to encounter and then putting into place risk mitigation factors. Can I fix that or can I not fix that? Those are really important questions, and it's a good conversation. It's a good question.
Yeah. So if any comfort, Michelle, I've been in the business for a long time. I didn't know what an SOP was, standard operating procedure, until about 2 years ago. But what we've sort of embraced now is, of course, AI. And what we have as advice is sort of it's a program called Whisperflow, and then combined with Claude. You just talk into your computer and say, can you create a template, SOP, and I would do this, I would do, like, as if you're sitting in front of one of your staff saying, do this, don't forget about doing this, do this, and have a conversation, and then it's completely amazing. And then of course that creates a template, which then you go on to another operating procedure. So that would be a bit of advice. But my question is based on Michelle's, it's Rob from Music Central Entertainment, Michelle's sort of circumstance, and this is a question for Susan or Albert, where she takes a subcontractor, and then where's the shift? Where's that magic point where she changes that from a subcontractor to an employee to staff?
Do you want to say that?
Yeah, sure. So in Canada, and let's just strictly speaking legally, I can tell you, it's a very, very employee-friendly regime. And so it's designed that, your lawyer is going to tell you, like employment contract. In the employment contract, what you're trying to do is to carve out the common law liabilities. So like the thumb in the air that lawyers use is like under ESA, it's like a week per year tenure. Common law, it's like a month per year tenure. And then so you're always trying to like ring fence and like exclude the common law. In practice, like even something that's drafted by a downtown law firm is 50-50. Don't let lawyers tell you that is better than that. It's 50-50. And there is I'm not happy to say this, but like over my lifetime, probably dismissed like 90 people. And so there is a way of going about it that has nothing to do with the legal documentation. Rather, it's like illustrating empathy and also helping them focus that the better way for you to spend time and how I can help you is not getting like some sort of residual value from like winding that down. Rather is how can I help you get into the next position? And then that would be like kind of, you want them to focus on that. And then like at a very sort of like putting on like my owner like hat on is that, and again, like I think all the feedback from the room is like consistent, like as a sort of entrepreneur, is that first, it's a iterative process. Like some of the mistakes that I made like 2 years ago, like I was like, holy crap, that was really stupid. And then like, so it's a common theme that you're gonna learn in your own journey where you have blind spots. That's very normal. And then, so like to your point, like I think the mistakes that we've made is that early on, and we talk about SOPs and everything, I come from a very institutional setting where I think the way to build a business is sort of like you get together a group of guys who are like, or gals who are like, Navy SEALs. And then like, you kind of like just blurt out a couple things and then you run out the room and just do what they do. And then in reality, the labor force has not enough of those type of people. It won't work. And then so the reason why your business is not kind of like performing the way you want to is that those people don't quite exist in the quantity that you want. And so we started reconceptualizing it is that, no, this is like kind of like running the Marines. you just need to have people. Like, I don't want you to ask any questions in the first couple of years. You have to get out of bed at 7 a.m., not 7:01, not 6:59. You're going to get out of bed at 7, or you're going to fold your bed sheets exactly this way. And then, so like, we're starting to pivot in our own business, thinking about what discipline and the command structure looks like, and then simplifying all the things that we do so that it's more scalable. You can tap a much larger available labor force. And to your point, like, if in your business you can keep people as contractors, I would suggest do that as long as possible. And then once they become like sort of like more of a key man, like someone that you absolutely need, then there's a separate discussion about sort of like what we talk about, like stock options and like employment, plans and management incentive plans to kind of tie sort of their self-interest with the business performance.
Were you asking because you got a subcontractor that you're considering, even in a hypothetical scenario, becoming an employee?
That is correct.
Thank you. So I like to look at it through the lens of, first, legality. Are we at risk of this person becoming a deemed employee or not? And there's some rules around that legality I'm going to leave to others. Mm-hmm. Aside from that, is this person somebody that I want to bring on board? I know them, I like them, I trust them. They are definitely our good culture fit for us. Yes or no? Is this a role that will grow with the company as the company continues to grow? And does the subcontractor want to be an employee? Some really don't. Some do. And does their desire for growth match what the company has as their desire for growth? Which, to the termination conversation, you don't want to be hiring somebody and 3 months later, like, ooh, that was a big mistake. But now because they're an employee versus a subcontractor, my obligations are very different to how we have to part ways in this relationship. We can get into the cost of a mishire. It's a different and total separate conversation. Did that help to answer?
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
It's Louise Matuzas with Thrive Trusted Business Advisors. I've got a question, and I don't know if it's for Depot or for Albert or both of you. The lifetime capital gains, the lifetime capital gains exemption that business owners can have if they've had a corporation for over 2 years. Yep. Has to be proved. And I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah, so first of all, like we generally defer to like the tax advisor, but you're right. There is a burden to prove that like it's some sort of an active business. And also there is a time, just generally speaking, and it kind of dates me, but I liken it to the movie Matrix, and like Keanu Reeves, and we find out later on in the trilogy, there's many prophets that comes before him. But the first test is like you jump off the building to see if they can figure out how to fly. No one does it right the first time, not even if you're fit. And in my personal experience, so the rule in terms of tax avoidance, the GAR rules is this. You generally, the thumb in the air number is like whatever tax planning you need to do, it needs to be at least 2-3 years before the liquidity event, or else CRA is going to be like something doesn't smell right. That's the general rule of thumb. And then the reason why I say this is that I don't think I've ever seen a person who sold their first business who did this right. I don't think I've seen it. And then I've helped people buy and sell like hundreds of businesses. So I actually cannot remember like a first time player who did it right and didn't pay a big tax bill the first time around. And so to your point, yeah, like you need to do the tax planning 2-3 years ahead of time. And then there is substantive evaluation of like whether like this is like some sort of active business. And then I'll pass it to Depot.
And I think just to touch on that, I think one of the key things that CRA actually checks for is it actually for tax avoidance or does this really exist? And that's the proof of burden that needs to be given. And a lot of businesses, it's not only the 3 years, if you're actually running a valid business that's operational, that's profitable, that's gone through normal business journey, that's not difficult to prove. I think the problem is a lot of founders start out just trying to avoid as much tax as possible. That when they now get to the stage where they're trying to exit, they don't have the document to prove that they ran a profitable business for the past 10 years. All of a sudden, you're trying to sell it for an amount that doesn't tie up to any of the documents you have on file. So really that's where it breaks down. So I always say, with tax planning, it's actually driven by business planning. So a lot of people talk about tax planning, but no one talks about business planning. And if you have a business planning, financial model, you're already thinking about how you're going to exit your business from the day you started. So all the decisions you've made, you've documented it with the end in mind. And then it's not hard to prove the burden of what CRA is looking for you to actually get that exemption.
Thank you. And I think if there's anything I want to leave with advisors and fellow founders and business owners and aspiring business owners is that it is singularly the hardest and the most lonely journey you'll ever be on. It is hard. And don't think it's not going to be. And I think the other thing, just speaking with friends who's gone from zero to publicly listed companies, it also never stops. It's just you don't tell other people about it. Because you have to always come across as very poised. And then you have a team of, it goes from 3 people to potentially 30,000 people that you're dealing with. The only people who really knows your problem is yourself, and maybe sometimes you tell your wife. That's about it. And so I think it's a very, very long, hard journey. And what you see in public media is how great it is and all that stuff. But it's a lifelong commitment to a journey, and it's very iterative. It's doesn't matter as your company scales, you will always have problems. It never stops. It's just the scales of problems get much bigger, but you also have bigger teams to deal with the problems. But it won't ever stop. It won't ever change.
Eventually, enjoying what you do, changing, reiterating, knowing when you make mistakes, and also not only that, celebrating each of your success. I think as entrepreneurs, we often don't have bragging moments, and really just brag about it. Tell anyone that would hear it, and just be proud of yourself and well done. Thank you so much for attending today. And spending time with us. I want to say thank you again to my panel. I'm so grateful for you guys joining me on this journey and really making an impact to everyone that attended today.